Do you remember the first time that you ever touched a computer? I do remember very clearly. It was in the 1999 that my grandfather brought home a computer, and it looked like this. And at that time, I thought it's like a TV with a very weird box made by plastic. It looks like chocolate box. And then I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know anything about computer. And by curiosity, I touched the screen, I touched the button, and suddenly something showed up on the screen. And I was so scared that I broke the computer. And you know, I came to my grandfather and I say, "Grandfather, I broke the computer." And slowly, with very detailed guidance, my grandfather stepped with me into the world of digital. So that's what happened. And my grandfather was actually a hero to me because he can do many things. For example, he taught himself 7 different languages. And you know why? Because my grandfather always wants the best for the grandchildren. So after his retirement, he learned a variety of things so he can have knowledge to teach us. But then another story that I want to tell is when after he getting older and older and he fell ill. One day he was sitting in the wheelchair and he talked to me. He looked at me with a very sad eye that he felt like he was sharing with me. "Little girl, I'm so afraid of living this life." And at that time, I was too small to know anything, to understand anything. But later in life, I start to understand why he says so. So behind all the heroes, all the loved ones in our life, there are stories, there are fears. For example, elderly people have very confusing fears. The first one, other people don't care about me anymore because I have no use for them anymore because I'm getting old and getting weak. So that's why I cannot teach our grandchildren anymore. And even if my family love me and care about me so much, but still, I feel like I'm a burden for them. So that's why I feel so afraid of living. And that was not the story of my grandfather only, but it's a story of more than 1 billion elderly people in the world are facing the same problems. So, what are we doing to solve their problems? I want to ask a very simple question. Do you know any startup in Vietnam or in the world in particular are working to solve elderly people problems? Raise your hand. I see very little hands was raised. So, to talk about the available products and service for the elderly, we can think about the hospital for the elderly. We can think about the nursing home, about nutrition food, about health devices or diapers. But on the contrary, this is the available market for the kids. So you can see everything seems to be happening around the planet called kids. So can you understand why this thing happened in Vietnam in general? So I want to explain a little bit about when I was born in 1994. So everyone who was born in 1990 may understand this. And at that time, the government has a policy that narrowed down the number of the child who were giving birth in a family until 1 to 2 children per family. But the government didn't really have strong policy and plans to keep the golden arrow to last fast. You know, when a country have the golden population, that means they have many people in the working time, so they can produce a lot of resource and power to the country. But that to Vietnam didn't really last long, and now we are stepping into the world of aging population already. So we don't have time to really prepare for the aging populations. For example, you can see in Hanoi, there are only one hospital for the elderly people. And thousands of elderly people are sharing one hospital bed in statistic. So in Vietnam, there are 12 million elderly people, and Vietnam is also one of the countries with fastest aging rate in the world. So this is a very blue ocean. This is a very blue ocean market because we have a lot of opportunity for product and service providers to expand. And now many big corporations are planning on the smart city and elderly friendly city for elderly people. And many foreign countries care about these problems before we did already. And in Vietnam, HASU is one of the first startup that's working on the missions of improving the quality of life for the elderly. So during COVID-19, we have a platform that helps the elderly connect with the digital world and bringing them online for exercise, to be entertained, and to connect with other people. So that's what HASU did. And to come back with the three shifts in the mindset after all these things happen. So the first shift I want to mention is the shift in spending. So you remember years ago, our grandparents really did save for the children and for the family. But nowadays, it is shifting from the saving mindset to the enjoyment mindset. So for example, my mom understands that when she cares about her health, that means she cares about her family. And our grandparents do the same thing. So have you ever seen any elderly people buying a lot of fake product online? Raise your hand. So that's a signal that shows that elderly people are caring about their health. So elderly people global spending power is hitting 15 trillion US dollars in 2020, which is equal to an amount of GDP of China, which is the second wealthiest country on earth. So you see they spend a lot of money. And the second shift, elderly people with technology. So when I first started with the journey working with the elderly people, I was basically start with one mission, that I have to go to a class and I have to teach 30 elderly people how to use a smartphone. And you know, at that time, I prepared all the slides and everything was available. So my first lesson is going to be how to turn on the phone, how to turn off the phone. The second lesson is going to be how to search something on the internet, for example. So, and when I actually bring all the documents to class, I saw all my students out there were showing each other pictures on Facebook. So I was pretty shocked. And one of my students in class, she was 86 years old. And I had a question for him. How can you search something on the internet? And very simply, she was holding her phone and say, "Okay, Google, please search for me something." Okay, so that's what happened to my class. So I came to know and I learned that elderly people are empowered by themselves already into the digital world. But still, there are many funny things that happen. For example, when an elderly people are exercising in front of the screen, everything you can see is this: the ear, the forehead, and the nose. So it was very funny in our class. And the shift number 3 is the importance of mental well-being. So you can see that nowadays, many elderly people and even our grandparents and our parents do care about mental health more than ever. So that you can see the rising numbers of clubs, tours, a lot of elderly people going to the pool. For example, in my building, at 10 o'clock, the whole pool was full of elderly people chatting with each other. So they made a society, and the mental health is really extremely important. And I want to share with you a story, also a service from Hasu that we made. So years ago, when my grandfather was in bed, and 6 months before he passed away, together, I and my grandfather, together, we wrote a book about his life. So before that day, he didn't really show the love to the family because he was a soldier. So he didn't really get familiar with telling love to their loved ones. But after writing the book, and with the detail in that book, we came to understand that how he loves his family and everything he wanted to share, he shared in the book. And right before he passed away, he told me that his life, he didn't really have anything to regret because he gave his best to the family already. So, my last 3 sentences that I want to share with you is, understand the people that we love. Love the people the way they want to be treasured. And treasure every single minute of your life when your loved ones are still around. Thank you very much.